Hey everybody, this is Perch. I think about every, I don't know, 4 to 6 months, you get into the, comic companies are about to die comments, and I get a lot of questions about that. And what I'm liking about this moment, because generally these moments are painful for people, painful for they're just annoying because they have the same kind of arc, same story. It's like watching, the same rerun over and over again. But what's a little different about this one is I've got a lot of people asking questions or investigating different facets of the whole thing. They're talking about different angles of it, so it's pulling out more thought, and I'm not sure why that is. Although maybe it's just a general. Everybody's kind of exhausted with this topic, so everybody's kind of looking around and having different things to say about it. That's nice. I don't know. You take glass half full. We're on the front side of the empty map today. Anyway, here's a mail with a question. It says, "Hey Perch, I saw your tweet from less than an hour ago about how if you predict the death of DC and Marvel every year for 100 years, you're going to eventually get it right." That was a very tongue-in-cheek tweet, and there's a sinister motive behind that tweet, which I'm sad to say worked out. I am sad to say, but goddamn, this is, I don't know if this is my personality or others of you feel this way. So let me know in the comments. But one of the parts that I don't know, I miss that. I miss things being less predictable. I truly do. I like more uncertainty. Maybe it's just getting older. This is the thing about you've seen a lot, and if you when you start predicting kind of how things are going to play out and really easily, it I don't know. It takes the fun out of life. I like random unpredictability. I do. That's probably one of the reasons I thought Twitter was more enjoyable than Facebook years and years ago. Unfortunately, Twitter's, well, whatever. Let's get back to the mail. Uh, I'm going to try and be as blunt as I can be. That's good. With what I've seen going on at WB, is this the beginning of the end for DC? I want to be clear that I'm not one of those doom and gloom types you see on YouTube or in their comments almost giddy with the idea of this year's going to be the year. If anything, I want to be optimistic because from the time I was a kid, the first superheroes I knew of were Batman, Robin, and Superman. About 85 to 90% of the comics I own are DC. I've met people who have worked on the comics I enjoyed as a kid. I don't want them to go away. If anything, I want them to get better. I remember moments in my life where I rediscovered my love for comics, particularly DC, like when I spent a summer with a comic store a block from where I lived, or like in 2016 when DC did Rebirth and a friend and I were visiting the store every week and kept talking about how much we loved what we saw. By the way, just as an interesting point, it's probably a whole video on its own. There's a lesson to be learned from Rebirth. Because I went back and I read several of the comics that were actually part of Rebirth. And several, I mean, there was good storytelling there. There was some kind of energy and momentum. But by and large, the stories weren't, some of the stories were very good, no doubt about it. But others they're okay. I mean, they weren't massively better. But what was very, very different was the approach DC took to marketing, promoting, and kind of, messaging out their comics, which was, we're doing this for you. They did a very aggressive, we're doing this for you path. And they're like, we really are excited about there was even this bit that DC did, which was, we're really excited to hear what you think about our books. And it was that, whether true or not true, it worked. People liked it. It gave the fans a sense of, investment and connection. And to me, I guess my takeaway is it was easy. I mean, getting good talent on the books, curating out, I mean, I'm sure you can't, you put Gary Frank on something, you're going to get a good book. And it takes time to do his work and everything else. That was about the time that Sean Murphy got the White Knight stuff going on. That was very good. We've talked to him. But it's that just messaging in a way that felt, you're going to love this, inclusive. It felt like the company was kind of putting their arm around you to say, hey, you're one of us. Come on. We've got some comics you want to read, and we want to know what you think about them. We hope you like them. You're part of the club. That is so easy of an approach. And I think the thing that strikes me is like, you could replicate that in a week. It's not hard. So why not? Like, even if you secretly hate the fans, fake it. Like, it'd be easy to fake. I mean, a really cynical person can look at that stuff and go, these words are vacuous. There's nothing really to them. But it worked. It's funny. Anyway, let me finish off the mail. It says, am I getting too worked up over something that I have no clue is going to happen? Would love to know your opinion. Thanks again for the shows you do. They're a highlight of my day. P.S. Hope you're doing well. As recently, my friend watched one of your videos and texted me saying, Comics Dad sounds pissed. I'm fine. I'm completely fine. Anyway, look, I think that, is DC going away? I've answered this in other videos. No. I mean, the thing to watch out for when you really want to start worrying about, is DC, the publishing arm, in severe trouble, it's when the licenses have no value. It's when, people just stop giving a shit. If you go into your Target and you see, zero Marvel DC toys, you don't see them branding on, this is a friend of mine who ran a comic shop in a different state, used to have this theory. And it was one of those, it's the underwear theory. And I think I mentioned this on before, but it's like, how do you know if you're in a recession? Well, and it's a legitimate, theory that financial analysts use. And it says that in a recession, people don't buy socks and underwear. They just hang on to what they have. When they feel like they have money to burn, or they're feeling good about their finances, they will go buy more socks and underwear. And the reason being is, generally, socks and underwear do not age quickly. They're hidden clothing, meaning they're not buffeted by styles or fashion trends or any of that kind of stuff. They're less likely to get damaged. They just kind of survive. Eventually they get old enough you buy new ones, but it generally, underwear does fine. And you can kind of use it you can use that industry as a barometer of when people are pulling back on their finances. And you might think that's absurd, but actually it's pretty accurate. Anyway, the theory my friend had, which I found to be more accurate than you would think, is go into the greeting card aisle in a Walmart or a Target or wherever, a grocery store, and scan the greeting cards for who are the licensed characters on display there. You're going to get a lot of kid characters, you're going to get the Paw Patrol and, Mickey Mouse and that kind of stuff. But you're going to see a healthy amount of, superheroes on those cards. You're going to see, Marvel and DC cards. You're going to see a handful of, Target had ones with Invincible on it and The Walking Dead. Like, Skybound's getting into this game, this racket. And his theory was, over the years, he's noticed that the amount of superheroes that you see on the greeting cards, the volume of them, gives you a pretty good indication for how well the business is going. And I felt like that was really stretching it, but it's been pretty accurate. And what it's basically testing is something simple. Licensing the image to go on those cards is cheap, relatively easy. If people aren't bothering to do that, to spend the money for the license, that is an indication that license has less value, that people are less interested in it, and you can kind of say, well, that's not a good sign for the business. Now, there's a lot of different things like that, but if you want to just an experiment you can do on your own next time you're out and shopping or whatever you're doing, try that. And just notice over time, you do see fluctuation from holiday to holiday to event with these cards, and it winds up being pretty accurate. It's weird. Anyway, throwing that out there. No, I think the licenses are still valuable. I think people are still able to make money off them, and as a result, the comics are going to continue to be published. Now, you can argue there's no point to publishing the comics. I mean, a lot of these licenses will live on. You'll know what Superman, Batman is. Is the comics really doing much to enhance that? And the reality is, a little bit. Comics do enhance that license. It also gives people who are selling that license a stat that people care about. Now, maybe they won't care about in the future, but they do today, which is there's a monthly comic book in circulation, sells, thousands, tens of thousands of copies. Hundreds of thousands would sound better, but to be honest, in a licensing deal, and when you're talking some of these characters, it doesn't really matter. Comics are adapted into movies, and we're keeping that brand alive constantly. Because one of the challenges of licensing movies and why comic books have been successful for this business is because movies come out every 2, 3, 4 years. That's the frequency. Even a television show, increasingly a Game of Thrones or something like that, is going to film a season, it's going to come out, and then it's going to disappear for a year or more. Stranger Things, 2 years. So comics has one big advantage that licensors love, which says there will be brand presence in the market always, every month. There's going to be something there. And the people licensing this do not, maybe they should, but they don't, sit there and go, but where is this being sold? Oh, in a specialty direct comic shop. That, okay, that's not as impressive as I thought at first. They don't think that way. In fact, what we've seen through pop culture, through kind of the promotion of Comic Cons and having a comic shop on things like that really annoying show with the four guys who are scientists, Big Bang Theory. What you see is that is perpetuating the overall narrative or push quite well. It's like, well, comic shop appears on TV. Comic shops are cool places. Everybody, you remember a comic shop as a kid? Oh yeah, I sure do. Okay, now maybe you do, maybe you don't. Who knows? But if you're licensing this stuff, it adds up and it's helpful. And as long as that system is in place and people are thinking like that, Marvel and DC are going to be fine. Smaller companies are going to struggle, so they're going to run out of money, or they're not going to be able to use their exit plan of, selling off to a media company or getting their properties adapted. They're in trouble because they're cash starved. But Marvel and DC are owned by giant corporations where, quite bluntly, their whole operating costs are a rounding error to their bottom line. Even Zaslav coming in on Warner Media and making changes, it's still tiny. That's it. But anyway, I don't know what to tell you. But I hear you that you want to get it that you want it to get better. Absolutely. I mean, lots of us want it to get better. I've said this before, and I have this theory that as long as the business is operating this way, meaning the licensing is where the real value is, the characters getting pushed out is good revenue for the parent company, and it is, licensing money for Marvel and DC exceeds the comic money, but the comics are part of that chain. If they weren't, you'd see more motivation from these companies to try and improve their product. But right now, the checks are rolling in, and the people who are in charge have good salaries at that top level. And quite frankly, and this is probably the big counter argument to all these rumors and reports, Zaslav's really keen on wanting to know what's going on in the comic business. If the licensing money is holding up, then his attention is going to be, why can't we do an adaptation of the comics? Or why can't we do, not even the comics, he didn't care. Why can't we do a movie with Superman and the Justice League that has the same level of power and financial backing that, Feige's doing over there at Disney? That's where his interest is going to lie. He is not going to take the long approach unless Zaslav is a secret, massive comics fan and, like you, would like to see it get better. And if that's the case, that's even better news. Then you're going to see somebody who really wants to improve the business. But as long as comics is the long tail of this entire chain, it can kind of just sit back and be what it is. People in charge wind up being more caretaker than leader. And maybe that's about as damning a thing as I can say about the books. Anyway, thanks for listening.